Well, thanks for joining us again today, folks, and joining the growing number of people who are turning into Stockwell day-to-day news. Stories today are fascinating and compelling. We're going to cover everything from Islamist cyber attacks in Canadian airports to some unseen new business roaring into Toronto, and on the US side, some things coming out of the culture world related to Taylor Swift, but not to be undone, the Canadian group Rush is making an announcement. So let's get right into it. Probably most serious of the day, definitely most serious of the day, is the fact that just yesterday there was an Islamist cyber attack in Canadian airports, Kelowna, where I live, and also in Windsor, Ontario. Now, what happened was somehow this Islamist cyber terrorist group, showing how sophisticated they are, was able to breach the systems of the airport, put Islamic chants over the PA system, and also break onto the screens, the advertising screens at the airports, which tell people their flights, etc., and put in anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish postings on those large screens. What's interesting is, and I used to be Minister of Public Safety for Canada, I can tell you this is very serious breakthroughs on cyber technology. For these Islamist groups to be able to infiltrate the airport systems and go for a number of minutes without being shut down is very concerning. Understandably, the authorities, the RCMP, and also you see out of Public Safety Canada, they're trying not to sound too excited or concerned about this, but it's very concerning. I can say that now that I'm no longer in government, and I'll tell you what, we need significantly more investment in terms of cyber protection. Also interesting that, did you notice how CBC hardly mentioned it at all? Matter of fact, when they posted the news on it, it was in one of their reports that's sort of like a travel guide. Why is it CBC is always, quite rightly, wanting to report any terrorist activity if it's anything but Islamic? They really play down when it's an Islamist attack, when it's Islamist terrorists. I don't think CBC is concerned about being called Islamophobia, and we're certainly not nobody's blaming all Muslims around the world for these cyber attacks. But the fact is, this is an identifiable Islamist terror group was able to crash the systems, and in some airports in the US. Very serious stuff. We'd like to see more of a spotlight on this and a little more investment on the protection side in our airports. Along with other things that the federal government in Canada is producing, they've produced, some people are calling it a cartoon book or a coloring book. It's not a coloring book, but it is a book talking about and showcasing the design and architecture of 50 different house designs. This is the federal government putting it out and recommending these particular house designs. Now, why is the federal government getting into the multi-million-dollar research and production of housing designs when there are hundreds, if not thousands, of housing firms, engineering firms out there that are always producing the latest and the best related to housing designs? This is very concerning in a time where we want to see housing promoted and people building houses, and where we realize one of the main costs and main inhibitors to builders building houses, and to young couples especially wanting to buy houses, is the suffocating layer of regulations at the federal level, provincial, and municipal that slow down or prohibit or raise the cost of housing. We're not against regulation. Obviously, you need some. It's completely out of control. The government should be focusing on that instead of producing the books that are already out there that are talking about the different looks you can have for your house. I hope people, if they look at that book, don't adopt many of the Soviet era looking designs that are in Prime Minister CARNEY's new house book. And I wish the government would get back to doing what government which should be doing, which is keeping our taxes down, regulations down, and making life affordable for our citizens. Talking of that, and talking about that, municipal elections are coming up around the country right now. Very important that we as electors, that you as an elector, first of all, don't ignore voting at municipal elections. Traditionally, municipal elections get around a 30% turnout, sometimes higher. And it's mainly, the turnout is mainly of people on the left, which is great. They're exercising their right. Union groups, municipal workers, etc., are wanting to get out there to vote for usually the most left-leaning candidate running for mayor. The problem is when that candidate gets in, and when the councillors get in who have no understanding of how business works, no understanding of how to keep taxes low for citizens, they continue to see an increase in the size of City Hall and the City Hall budgets. One of the former mayors of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson, was famous for this, served a number of terms. He's now a member of parliament and a minister. And in the years that he was mayor of Vancouver, the size of the full-time employee group at City Hall was about 1,600 workers, quite a large army. And I'm not putting down the workers. If jobs get advertised, they're going to take them. And when he left, it was something like 9,600 workers. Absolutely stratospheric increase, way beyond the increase in the size of the city. This is typical of many mayors and councillors who just don't understand the dynamic of how to run efficient operations. So please take a careful look at candidates who are running, not just for mayor, but for councillors. Look at those who have experience dealing with real life issues, especially with costs that people are getting hit with. And remember, every time a city hires a new full-time worker, that's a 50-year commitment on the back of taxpayers. Listen, we value our public workers, but let's make sure we've got the right numbers of them. And when your city council or mayor is talking about hiring more, that's every new hire, on top of all those that are already there, is a 50-year taxpayer commitment. Keep that in mind and keep an eye on who wants your tax dollar running for municipal office. When you talk about interesting mayoralty race, the one coming up in New York City is also going to have some effect on the Canadian side, and here's why. Zoran Mandami, who is the extreme socialist, of course, self-declared, that is running to be and has a good chance of becoming mayor. And he is very open and honest about completely taking over business in New York. He's talking about government-run grocery stores. Every city where that's been tried by some foolhardy government, it's been a disaster, huge costs, and those stores eventually having to close down. But he's talking about there. More than that, he also, on the international scene, he's made it very clear that if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel ever sets foot in New York City, he will have him arrested. The potential mayor of New York City, will have a prime minister from another country arrested based on the false claims of genocide, which now that the Gaza ceasefire is in place, the humanitarian groups are in there and they are saying, quite rightly, there was no genocide. A lot of people died on both sides in this war. There was no genocide. And here you have the mayor of New York saying he'll still arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, what's the implications there for Canada? Well, Canada's former prime minister, Justin Trudeau, famously announced, yes, he would have Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrested because of the international court ruling in terms of genocide. And now that genocide has been proven not to have happened in Gaza, we see all kinds of humanitarian groups going in there, a lot of damage, and many people died on both sides. No genocide happened. And here we do not have a clear declaration. When Prime Minister CARNEY is asked the question, would you have Prime Minister Netanyahu arrested? He won't say a clear no. Maybe because he looks at some of the groups that support him, Mr. CARNEY does, like the university crowd, and we've just had now a professor at Concordia University. Concordia University has some great programs. I even taught there for a number of years, gave a program several years in a row. Some great students, some great staff. But to have a professor from Concordia suggesting that Zionists should be killed. I'm not exaggerating, that should be killed. Now, she later panicked after a few days and took that text down, but she will not answer for it, and neither will the Concordia administration. They're going to keep somebody on, apparently, who's recognized, who is saying that an identifiable group should be killed. Match that with what McGill faculty just did a few days ago. They voted for a motion that is clearly anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, relative to doing business with Israel. So the faculty, now it shouldn't be surprised that the faculty of McGill voted for an anti-Semitic motion, because even before the Second World War, even before the horrific effects of Hitler and Nazism, way back even in the 30s, McGill had a quota on how many profs there could be who were Jewish. Terrible stuff. And now they seem to be, McGill is going back to its roots with the majority of faculty voting for an anti-Semitic motion. So a good opportunity here for Prime Minister Carney to turn around the narrative and do something to stop this very dangerous increasing wave of anti-Semitism affecting the Jewish community in Canada and in the United States. You go along, you take that story, compare it with the increasing stories that come out, rarely from mainstream media, about, you want to talk about genocide, you want to talk about religious persecution. In Nigeria, reports are that numbers of Christians being killed by radical Islamists there. Now, some of the figures go as high as 500,000 been killed. I don't know, we need more detail on that number. But a number of humanitarian organizations have pegged the number just in this last year at 7,000. I'll let you just let that sink in for a second. 7,000 Christians killed by radical Islamists in Nigeria. And when they do this killing, they've kind of taken their cue from Hamas. They just swarm into these small towns. People call them villages, they're small towns. And they drag women, children, men, out into the town square, Soviet style, communist style, and just murder them. And so little uproar, if any, from the humanitarian organizations or media organizations like CNN in the United States, like CBC in Canada. They just don't care about Christians being murdered, but they certainly care when it happens, or apparently happens, to other people. Look at what's happening, a fascinating development in the world of business in Canada. As you know, you've got the federal government promising billions of dollars to try and get industries going that are being hit by the U.S. tariffs which I don't agree with, but which we're being hit with. And so the federal government response, of course, is just give massive subsidies to prop up other businesses. You see it on the provincial side too, province of British Columbia, allowing billions of dollars to go to China to help build new ferries for British Columbia. So all kinds of subsidy going to what government thinks should be enforced. And here, the organization, the rideshare company called Lyft, that's L-Y-F-T if you're not familiar with it, those of you who take Uber, which is most of the world these days, a lot of business moving to Lyft. They're a fast-growing organization. And their largest office has been in San Francisco. They're opening up another office in Toronto. They'll be hiring hundreds of high-paying engineer, cyber-type jobs, of course, also jobs for drivers, and it includes a bike-sharing company. So here you have a company. They haven't responded, not being subsidized by government, but they're looking at, guess what? Their customer base, and they're seeing an increasing demand. And so customers voting with their wallets are the reason, Canadians voting with their wallets are the reason you're going to see hundreds of high-tech jobs coming right into the city of Toronto. I say to governments everywhere, wake up. Stop trying to pick and choose the winners and losers. Anytime governments pick and choose winners and losers in business, they usually wind up making losers out of winners and rarely make winners out of losers. So government, focus more on what you should be focusing on. Driving down the cost of doing business, driving down the size of government, and taxation, and letting citizens be the innovative entrepreneurs that will result in true wealth being created and jobs being created along the lines that people need. So let's keep that in mind. A survey just recently done by Merchant Growth magazine shows that 82% of businesses, and these would be including small business, 82% are saying the biggest problem they face is government-induced inflation. Government spending and borrowing way beyond what they should be doing, driving up inflation, drives up the cost of the customers, drives up the cost of doing business. So instead of government repeating the vicious cycle of borrowing money and subsidizing like crazy, which causes an increase of tax, which causes increase in inflation, which makes goods and services harder to purchase. Government, wake up, start doing your job. Listen to the small business operators who are the true job creators. You're killing them. Back off and start looking and doing the job of government, not the job of being in business and in being in everybody else's business. Interesting stories, couple on the cultural front. And, you know, we've been talking about Taylor Swift a bit the last couple weeks. Well, she's driving the media. And just, you know, we should put out there that she's increasing her billions, and I have no issue with that at all. She's just announced there's a docuseries coming out. I don't get paid for advertising that, folks. I'm just telling you what's happening. A six-series documentary, so hundreds of $millions in advertising coming to her for that. And it's about her Eras tour and a full-on movie about a film about her, the last Eras tour. Listen, more power to her. That's fantastic. Young people are making her a multi-billionaire. But here's an interesting observation that I have. The socialists, the media, and the liberal left government, like the Liberals and the NDP, they love to go after so-called billionaires who've made their billions by providing long-term jobs, by building things, by investing in the country, investments that last for years and years. Those are the billionaires that are apparently the bad, evil ones. But if you are a movie star or a famous athlete or a multi-billionaire like Taylor Swift, getting financed by all of those folks who apparently don't have money to do anything else, then you're okay. Listen, I have no issue with Taylor Swift being a billionaire. I wish her all the best. But media should stop just picking on one group of billionaires. And actually, the group of billionaires who are the ones who create long-term jobs, who actually build things, build products, build services, the surveys show they are also the most philanthropic. Not that the Taylor Swifts of the world aren't philanthropic also. We know they give to causes. But the greatest giver to needy causes around the world, whether it's building hospitals, whether it's money to children around the world in global need, whether it's financing medical breakthroughs that spare us from some of the worst diseases, the biggest philanthropic givers are the billionaires who are also involved in industry and in commerce. So let's back off. If you're going to hit the billionaires, then you're going to have to go after Taylor Swift also and some of these athletes and entertainers. Let's not be, what shall we call it? Let's not be discriminatory against certain type of billionaires. Also, one more quick announcement on the culture entertainment front. The group Rush, many people in the US and in Canada, since it's a Canadian group, has announced they're going to do another tour. I love when these groups, you know, they retire, they do their final farewell tour, and they make millions on that, and more power to them. And then years later, they do a comeback tour. Anyway, Rush is coming back, and good for them. And you know, it's been a while since, I say this sincerely, they got over the death of their drummer. That was back in about in 2020, Neil Peart dying. They've replaced the drummer, Annika Nilles, who was a great drummer for Jeff Beck, and also a studio musician in her own life, is joining the group. Now, she's a spring chicken. She's only 42 years old. But all the other members of the group, they're calling the tour the over 50-something tour, or something to that effect, for over 50s. All of the members of that group that are going to be performing, most of them are over 70, and they're going strong. So I want to thank Rush for sending out a great message of hope for people who are over 70 and wondering should they be retiring. Not necessarily. Think like Rush and keep on going. Thanks for joining us today, folks.